Okay.
Hi, I'm Lori from Quilters Headquarters in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and today I'm going to show you how to load your long arm. This way of loading the long arm can be used on almost any kind of long arm, so this is just going to be a quick demo of how we do it here at Quilters Headquarters. The first thing that you want to do, this is our backing, and so we're going to find the middle of our backing by just folding it in half. And I just put a pin where the center is, just like that. The next thing we want to do is just throw our backing wrong side up over the long arm. Now you can stand behind your long arm or in front of it, it really doesn't matter. I'm going to elect to stand in front of it. Give myself a little bit more room here. We have our leaders marked with a little line right here for the center. And I'm just going to line up my backing with the center here. And put my first pin in. Now I pin about 1/4 inch away, just like that. And then I go about every 6 inches and then I go back in and fill it in. So I'll pin from the center to the left side, and then I'll start again from the center to the right side. And you may wonder, a lot of long armors like to use corsage pins, a little bit heavier pin. I really like these flat flower pins, and the reason I like them is because as a business we've taken a few long arms in on trade, and what I've noticed is the leaders really get chewed up with those big long pins, big fat pins, and so I like to use these. They don't chew up the leaders as bad. Yes, they will bend, and if you don't like that, then don't use them. But I like it. They're easier on my hands and they're easier on the leaders. So these are the ones we use. So now again you can see I'm just filling in. I try to get my pins to go end to end. So maybe I might have to fill in 2 pins. So between my 2 pins here I fill in. And then I'll continue on going in the other direction. Okay, so I've got the top pinned on. As you can see, I've pinned the top along the edge of the back of the leader, and I've got it pinned pretty much edge to edge, pin head to pin point, I guess. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to pin the backing onto this leader, and this is called our backing leader. So again, just sitting with the backing wrong side up, and again lining up my middle. I have my middle marked with my pin, and lining that up, end to edge to edge, and putting my first pin in. And just like I did on the top, I'll go from the middle to the side, left to right, right to left. And we'll be back when we get this part pinned on. Okay, so now we have our backing is pinned on both the top leader and the backing leader. And I want to point out a couple of things about our backing. You always want your backing to be straight, and so hopefully you've cut it straight that way and you've cut it straight this way. We've just used our selvages on this just for demo purposes. And also one other thing I want to point out is when you're pinning, make sure you get right up here to the edge on both sides so that you don't have anything hanging out. And also your backing needs to be 3 to 4 inches larger than your top all the way around. So if your top was 100 by 100, your backing should be at least 106 by 106. Okay, so now we've got our backing loaded, and we're going to roll it on up. We have what we call here a dead bar. Sometimes it's called an idler bar. That kind of helps just so that we don't have to continually raise our bar every time we roll our quilt. So notice that I'm rolling it to this bar first, and then I'm going to roll it backwards on. And you'll notice too that it's kind of wrinkling here. By rolling it two different ways, it'll straighten itself out. Particularly if you have a larger quilt, and if you ever get like a sag on this side or a sag on this side, by rolling it back and forth twice, you will eliminate that sag. So we'll get this rolled on here and we'll be back in a minute. Okay, so notice I have my backing pinned on and rolled up kind of nice and tight. I have it a little bit closer to me than normally you would when you're actually doing your quilting. So I've got it close up here so that I don't have to bend over so much, leaning on my bar, kind of skewing the straightness of things. So I just have it close where I can see what I'm doing. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a channel lock, and I'm going to first put my batting on. Then I'll do the channel lock. And I just have a scrap piece of batting here, so we're a little short for what a quilt would be, but I just sort of center it on here. Now if you don't have a whole lot of extra backing, you want to get it as close as you can, but for us, I like to have a little bit of extra backing along the top here. Now I'm going to set my channel lock on my long arm, and I'm going to sew the baste, a straight line across here. I set my channel lock. My channel lock is set on the back side of our machine. Yours might be different. That's the vertical. There we go. Alright, and I'm just going to baste a straight line through the batting to the other side. We'll be back in a second. Okay, so I've got my machine set on a base stitch, and we're going to stitch right across a straight line right across here. I've got my channel lock on. Some machines will have their channel locks on a computer screen here. Some will have a manual channel lock like we do here in our Qnique 21. And sometimes you don't have a channel lock. In that case, I would just rest it against the bar back here and just use the bar as a straight stitch. So now I'm going to bring my needle up, or my bobbin thread up. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Just by doing that, bring it up, move it away, bring my bobbin thread up. You always want to bring your bobbin thread up so that you don't get any threads caught up in here in your stitch regulators and your encoders. And then we'll just start. This is a large baste. Normally I do a smaller baste, but it really doesn't matter as long as you get that straight line. Okay, so I'm going to stop it, and now I want to bring up my bobbin thread again. So I'll pull my machine away, do another one stitch, and pull it away again. Now honestly, when you're as close to the edge as I am, you could probably just pull it off and do it that way, but notice here that my bobbin thread is right here, and so I bring it up right here, and we'll cut them all, cut both top and the bottom. Alrighty, the next thing we're going to do is we want to lay our top which again, of course, is perfectly straight like all tops are. Push this over there. And so I'm going to mark my middle again. You can kind of see on my fabric here, I actually do have a little bit of a crease. Otherwise I'd pin it. But I'll just lay my middle of my top. Here's the marking on my leader, and I'm just going to follow that down and lay it right here. So I'm going to lay my top right down on the line here. I don't worry about all of this give here. I'm going to baste this down. And notice how nice and easy it is for me to see it by having it closer to me. So now I'm going to go back and change my channel lock. I'm going to baste within that 1/4 inch seam there where our binding is going to be, so I don't have to tear out the basting later. And I'm just going to leave this wrinkled just like this until I get that basted down. Okay, as you can see, I have basted my top onto my backing and my batting along the top. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do, and notice I still have it kind of wrinkled here. Well, now I could go ahead and straighten it out if I want to, because it's nice and firm and basted. I used a 1/4 inch basting stitch. I wouldn't really go more than a 1/2 inch basting stitch, but a 1/4 inch works well for us today. So the next thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to roll it back, and then we'll be basting our sides, and we'll call it good. Okay, so I've rolled it back a little bit, and now I'm going to straighten my top. So the next thing I want to do, I like to use my 24-inch ruler just to kind of rake it, and you always want to check underneath too. You'll notice that I'm not pinning my top to the bottom part of my top to any other rail. I like to float my top. And the reason I float my top, several reasons. It's just easier. But secondly, I can always check under here, see if I've got any wrinkles in my batting. If you've got a large quilt, you might get little creases right here. And you want to check and make sure that everything's nice and smooth after every roll. Bring in your batting, make sure there's no huge wrinkles there. Bring your top down. And especially on bigger quilts, I like to use my rake. And normally, if I would have cut my batting right, I would have had it a little bit bigger. I would have had my top probably, like 3 inches out here. You also, at this point, would want to clamp your backing. Now, I don't normally clamp anything other than just the backing fabric. And you don't want to clamp it so bad that it pulls and stretches like that, because when you take it off, it's just going to slurp right back up. So you just want to have it there just to hold it, to keep it from wiggling too much. You also want to have your quilt resting on the top. You want to have a little bit of space between the bed of your sewing head and the bar here. Not a lot, too much, and you'll have skip stitches. Too little, it'll drag. So you have to have just the right amount of space under here. You also want to have a little bit of bounce, a little bit of give to your quilt here. You don't want to have it so tight that you can bounce a nickel off of it. If you do that, you're going to have skip stitches, you're going to have thread breaking, all sorts of problems. So we'll go ahead and we'll clamp just the backing. And then we'll baste the sides down. Now normally on a quilt this size, this is pretty small, I often will forget to clamp the backing, but for today's demo, we'll clamp it. And then we're going to just baste down the sides here. Now I'm probably going to run into my clamp there.